Harry's wife. 87.3. The Ellen interview. Well, having had the exciting revelations in the book segment of the show, we now move on to a different part of the interview. As I've explained, and just to be clear, so that nobody's confused, I have not been able to locate the interview in its entirety and therefore have selected 4 sizable segments which will be more than sufficient to get the tone of the interview and also take you through the salient points. This time, we're presented with a segment which runs for just over 5 minutes, which is titled The Unique Way Harry's Wife, the Duchess of Sussex, Used to Get into Her Car. So let's dive into the analysis and see what is to be learned from these, no doubt, sensational and riveting revelations.
This is really, you said the last talk show you did was like, I don't know, another decade ago, but you used to come to this lot to audition all the time.
Oh my gosh, completely. I would park at gate 3 and then I would scoot on over, and what was so nice is the security guards here would always say, break a leg, we hope you get it. So to drive in today was very different.
But you auditioned that often that they knew you to say break a leg?
I think they probably said it to everybody, that's how nice they were.
Yeah, I see.
Halting at 25 seconds, we are then treated to the anecdote about the fact that Harry's wife used to attend this particular lot where the filming for the Ellen show takes place on a regular basis when she was undertaking her auditions back in the day. And she explains that the security guards were so familiar with her that they always used to encourage her to break a leg. The way that she conveys this anecdote is as if she doesn't realise that the term break a leg is commonly used within theatrical circles as a way of saying good luck. And of course, she ensures that it's about her as if they've never said it to anybody else and that she's the first person in the world that this has been said to. You can see as she relays this, the animated way by which she recalls the anecdote for the purposes of assertion of control, with the repeated giggling that goes with it as she thinks that it's entirely hilarious. And of course, she receives the appropriate response from the supine audience, but to anybody else listening, it's dull as dishwater. This, of course, enables her to talk about this, to continue to be the centre of attention in the interview, to manage the facade, and so far, no threats to the assertion of control.
So your car that you used to drive to auditions was a very special car.
Yes, it had a life of its own. So I had this very, very old Ford Explorer Sport, and at a certain point, the key stopped working on the driver's side, so you couldn't get yourself in through the door. So after auditions, I would park at the back of the parking lot, and I would open the trunk and climb in, and then pull it shut behind me and crawl over all my seats to get out. That's how I would come to and fro.
Oh my God.
I know, so it was not ideal.
Did anyone ever see, I know you parked far away, but did anyone ever see you climb through a trunk?
No, I would play it off. I would go like, oh, I'm just looking for my resume and my highlighters for my script. Oh, maybe it's back there. And then crawl all the way.
Oh my God.
Stopping at 1 minute and 13 seconds, we then receive the anecdote about how apparently she had this very old Ford Explorer and that the driver's door wouldn't open because there was a problem with the lock, which necessitated her clambering into the trunk, the boot, worming her way through the interior of the vehicle to then get in and drive off, and how this would happen repeatedly, and that she would then pretend she was mooching around in the back of the trunk, in the back of the car, looking for something before entering it. And she repeatedly laughs as she relays this apparently hilarious anecdote. There's quite a lot to unpack from this. First of all, I understand that her sister, Samantha, has poured cold water on this being a very old vehicle and explaining that a new vehicle had been provided by the father. If that is accurate, then of course this demonstrates that this tale is fabricated. Now, why would it be fabricated? Well, because Harry's wife wants to make herself seem funny and quirky and goofy, and believes that this is a little hilarious bon mot that she can share with everybody. Now, she's an individual that, of course, has no real imagination. And you might think, oh, come now, she lives in a complete world of her own. She imagines so much. Well, yes, but she doesn't, in effect, create it of her own. She doesn't generate it from having brilliant original thoughts to write, to paint, to create a film, to come up with concepts. What she does, like many narcissists of her range, is she borrows it from elsewhere and then passes it off as her own. So the invention part is that it actually never happened to her, but she wasn't capable of actually generating it out of thin air. She had to borrow it from somewhere else by way of character trait acquisition. And it's been identified by many people that there was a car advertisement starring Catherine Zeta-Jones, which Harry's wife's tale replicates, all save the model of the vehicle. In the video itself, which I'm sure that you've seen, Catherine Zeta-Jones appears in what looks like an underground car park to find two chauffeurs have blocked her vehicle in so she can't get into through any of the doors, and thus, dressed up to the nines, she takes off her heels, walks over the top of one of the adjoining vehicles, and, sizzling and smouldering, goes in through the trunk, makes her way into the car, and drives off triumphantly. Exactly the way that Harry's wife describes it. And therefore, given the fact that her sister has suggested that it wasn't a very old vehicle at all, and indeed that it might have been an entirely different vehicle, it suggests that the incident didn't actually take place. Moreover, of course, if you can't get in through the driver's door, getting through the passenger door, getting through the sunroof, could you not leave the window down and slide in through there, or one of the rear doors? So again, the substance of the story doesn't stack up with the options that might be available. Or go and get the lock repaired, because apparently this was happening repeatedly over a period of time. Another factor, of course, that should be noted as she relays this tale is watch how she acts out all the various parts of it, from trying to get in through the lock, to mooching around in the trunk, to as if she's crawling through like a thief in the night. And that over-exaggeration demonstrates again that her narcissism causes her to not only have to say it, but to act it out, to over-egg, to try and convince, which further underlines the fact that it is unlikely to have occurred, the fact that her sister suggests that it does not, and the fact that we know that narcissists are prone to the revisions of history, and, of course, the manner in which that she acts it out, all support that it is unlikely to have actually occurred, alongside, of course, the other options that would ordinarily be common sense options for entering your vehicle if there was a problem with the lock. Now, this character trait acquisition of what was most likely seen in the Catherine Zeta-Jones advertisement, Harry's wife doesn't think to herself, do you know what? I saw that. That'll make a good story. I'll use what happened with the Catherine Zeta-Jones advertisement for myself. She just does it, and her narcissism blinds her to the fact that she's purloined it from somewhere else. As she's telling the tale, she doesn't think to herself, oh, I'm telling a porky pie, and this is from the advertisement. She honestly believes it, because the narcissism has caused her to do so. And of course, this anecdote has been used before, and I am aware people have made reference to another provider on YouTube had located footage where the anecdote has been used before, nearly word for word. Now, of course, many people churn out anecdotes repeatedly. They use the same ones. Many people groan about hearing their father's typical anecdote about the joke involving the turkey at Christmas time and such like, and therefore narcissists are certainly prone to trotting out the same exact story again and again and again, almost in a robotic, mirrored way, without deviation or embellishment from the original story. So it's not a surprise that that has occurred. And of course I understand perhaps that's been done to demonstrate, well, she's not that forgetful, because while she forgets about the emails, she doesn't forget about the tale. She may well have forgotten that she'd said it previously. Again, certain narcissists are prone to doing that because of the compartmentalization that occurs, that they have forgotten that they've told you something many times before, and they present it as new and fresh, because the narcissism does that through compartmentalization. So this entire anecdote is likely to contain a revision of history, character trait acquisition, mirroring, and of course is being done to try and pass her off as a bit goofy and kooky and fun. But under scrutiny, it doesn't bear up to analysis. Of course, whilst all this is being relayed, the reaction of Ellen is interesting. The rictus grin has appeared on her face. The eyes say, I don't believe a word of this hogwash, but I'm going to sit and smile and then issue the appropriate responses. Her narcissism governing her to do so, again for the purposes of asserting control and her own facade management, but she's evidently thinking this is a load of tosh. She's not convinced by it. Of course, Harry's wife doesn't pick up on this because the rictus grin that's coming back at her signals control and demonstrates that her narcissism hasn't, on this occasion, perceived that there is a threat to control.
Yeah.
Oh, God.
The things we do.
That's, we met, God, I don't know how many years ago. How long ago was that?
A long time ago, well before I was even on Suits, I think over a decade ago maybe, right? But we met at a pet shop.
Yes.
And I was going there to rescue a dog, and it was right around Christmas time, and you would come in at the same time, and you just looked at me and said, are you getting that dog? Get that dog. You have to take that dog home. I was like, well, if Ellen said I have to take the dog home, I'm getting this dog.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I didn't even, obviously, I didn't know who you were. I just love people rescuing pets. So as soon as you were holding the dog, I was like, take it.
Take it. And I said, okay.
Yeah.
And you did. I will.
And you
Yeah,
did.
I did. I listened.
I love that. Obviously, we are neighbors, so we see each other a lot.
Yeah.
And I love that y'all moved here. And Harry is loving it, right?
He loves it.
What's he love so much about California?
Well, we moved here during lockdown. I mean, exactly when things shut down. So we've just been able to spend a lot of time at home and creating our home. But I think it's just the lifestyle and, you know, the weather's pretty great. But we're just happy.
Yeah, that's not them there. That's not.
Stopping at 2 minutes and 18 seconds. The interview continues, moving away now from this hilarious anecdote about the motor vehicle to the fact of there's some recollection of how Ellen and Harry's wife know one another, and it's explained that they've known each other for a number of years, though, interestingly, neither of them can precisely recall just how many years it is, with Harry's wife suggesting that it's over a decade. This demonstrates two things. That both of them haven't probably known one another for as long as they actually think that they have, and in that particular moment, neither is going to particularly pin themselves down to an exact time because they can't actually recall, and moreover, neither wants to commit by looking as if they've kept some kind of record as to how long they've known one another, because it makes them look like they are keener on the friendship than the other one is. So there's the use of vagueness by both as a method of asserting control over the other. It then moves on to the circumstances of how they first met, and apparently it was in a pet shop, and this is where Harry's wife reveals the anecdote of saying that she was looking at a rescue dog, and apparently Ellen came over and said, you should rescue that one. Assuming that that's accurate, that exchange was one whereby, at that time, Ellen asserted control over Harry's wife by telling her which one to get. Now, Harry's wife's recollection of this anecdote threatens the control of Ellen because it actually portrays her as being somewhat bossy, and therefore, the retelling of it in the moment in the interview threatens Ellen's control. Of course, she's not going to leap across and suddenly grab Harry's wife's hair, tugging on it whilst addressing several punches to her nose. Instead, she has to assert control in another way, and she does so with another slapdown where she says, I didn't know who you were, I just love rescuing pets. And there's a double whammy in that response, because she's basically saying, I didn't know who you were, so your threat to control that you've posed by suggesting that I'm bossy, I have smacked to one side, and also, I was more interested in the dog than you. And therefore, she's been triangulated with the rescuing of pets, and therefore asserts that control. Of course, Harry's wife in that moment is also threatened by that response. The control is threatened by the way that Ellen talks about not knowing her. Of course, there's nothing worse to a narcissist than not being known, because that suggests that they're unimportant. And consequently, she basically responds by demonstrating again that she was just going along with because it's what Ellen says she has to do, by suggesting, hey guys, I just went along with it. And because she chooses to say that she chooses to confirm that she went along with it, because it's her choice to put it that way, that allows her to unconsciously have a feeling of control in response to the further provocation that came from Ellen talking about saying, I don't know who you are. Then moves on to the fact that they are neighbours. And interestingly, there's no talk about, hey, do you remember that time when you came over and we did this and did that together, which suggests actually the interaction between the two is limited. And therefore this false chummy facade of being matey with one another is just purely facade management. But also then, it's clearly the case that the briefing is that need to ensure that the world is told that Harry loves it in California. Because, of course, there's repeated footage showing that he looks rather down at heel, down at mouth, and downtrodden. And therefore, again, the remit of this huge piece of facade management that the interview is to basically tell us that Harry loves it in California. Indeed, go and get your bumper stickers right now. Harry loves it in California. And this, of course, prompts the obvious question from Ellen. Why does Harry love being here? Why does he love it? Simple enough question, which is being asked, and therefore would open it up to options such as, oh, he's made lots of new friends, he's engaged with the local community in this particular way, he has found that he enjoys the room to go and exercise, that he's found the way of life to his liking, that he's entered into new social groups, that he's provided him with new opportunities that he otherwise wouldn't have had, giving specific examples. Now, I've just said all of that off the top of my head, but then, of course, I'm vastly more intelligent than Harry's wife. And what are we treated to by way of the answer? Well, we moved here during lockdown, and we spent a lot of time at home together creating our home, and he likes the lifestyle, and the weather's pretty good. Absolute anodyne, fluff answers. And the reason being? Harry doesn't actually love it here. Harry's miserable. Harry's told what to do. Harry's wife doesn't give a fig as to whether Harry actually enjoys being in California. He'll do as he's told. And of course, if the narcissists were honest, the answer would be, who gives a rat's ass as to whether Harry's happy here? He's there to do my bidding. He's there to provide me with fuel, character traits. He's there to be under control. He provides me with residual benefits. He's enabled me to get a leg up in the world, and therefore I've pulled him away from his family so I can control him all the more, and now he becomes a mouthpiece for me, doing what I want and standing outside the window juggling his balls. That, of course, would be the clear and honest answer. But Harry's wife doesn't know any of that because her narcissism won't let her, and instead she has to give some alternative answer to explain that yes, he does love it and why. But the response is so devoid of detail, that it's so vanilla and industrial beige in nature, it just demonstrates that he isn't clearly loving it, because if he was, she would be able to give greater specificity. And because she's not a more evolved narcissist, she isn't able to fabricate particularization which would support giving a more detailed answer to the question that was posed. The fact that we've all seen footage which suggests the contrary, the fact that we know that his position as the intimate partner primary source to a narcissist means that he's in sustained devaluation, means that he can't be loving it. Yes, there might be instances here and there during the respite periods that he likes, but the fact is, has he got any friends in California? All his friends are back in the United Kingdom. He's been removed from his family. He's been removed from the institutions that he was familiar with all his life, that he'd grown up in, thrust into a different way of living, conned into believing that he was trapped, only to be moved from one prison to another. And of course, the fact that she's unable to give us any particularization as to what it is that he loves, even though probably she knew that this question was going to be asked, it demonstrates again the poor nature, the relatively ineffective way that her narcissism operates. Of course, to most people listening, oh, those are the things that he likes, and they'll just nod and lap it up. A more forensic interviewer might say, yeah, but, the weather, everybody knows that, and the lifestyle, everybody knows that. What is it specifically that he enjoys about California? And throw the question back. But that's never going to happen here, because it's that type of interview, which really is a form of advertisement rather than an interview. Join me in 87.4 as we continue further examination of the Ellen interview, allowing you to understand the dynamic between two narcissists and what is going on through the prism of narcissism.